Today we have Robert Richert. He is a ex-producer for a television show that used to be on atheism in Long Beach, California. He spoke at the Atheist Alliance International, the AAI convention in 2009, I believe. Is
Yes.
that right? 2009. And he's published many articles about atheism in many different publications. So let's welcome Robert.
Thank you, Bruce. Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you too. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I was raised in a religion-free home. Both of my parents, my dad, his side of the family came from Alsace, Germany. My last name is Richert, and that's a kind of a French-German variation because that's where Alsace is located. And my mom's side of the family came from Slovakia. And both of my parents were raised in religious homes in this country. Their parents were first-generation Americans. They were immigrants. But they lost interest in religion at a very early age. And so our family, myself, my younger brother, my older sister, were raised without religion at all. And I want to make a point. We weren't raised to be hostile to religion. We were just raised without it. Never went to church. And so religion is basically was irrelevant to my life.
Well, did they teach you morals at all? Because
of course.
obviously,
oh yeah,
a lot of people think that atheists don't have any morals. That kind of lets Christians know that there are people out there that they don't have religion, but they have good morals, and they teach their children good morals.
Well, some of your older viewers will remember Ozzie and Harriet. That was my family. My sister, my brother, my parents. We were a very loving family. We were as normal as can be. We had very good moral upbringing, and I live close to both my brother and my sister today. We see each other often. We care about each other a great deal. And so all of this nonsense about not having religion is equal to not having morals. I can put that away. My parents were married 53 love-filled years. When my mom died, it just crushed my dad. I thought wasn't sure he was going to survive. He did. He lived a little bit longer, and the last 8 years of my dad's life, he lost vision in both eyes. He had macular degeneration. So he had peripheral vision, but not detailed vision, and I lived with him, and I took care of him until he died 5 years ago.
I understand you were in the military, is that right?
Yes, it is.
And what part?
I went to school in Long Beach, and after high school, I went to Long Beach City College, but Uncle Sam was knocking on the door the entire time. I was drafted while I was going to Long Beach City College because there was a gap in semesters there, and I had a postponement of the draft so that I could finish my 2 years at Long Beach City College. And then I knew I was going to be drafted, and so I volunteered. So I am what's called RA in the Army, when your serial number is preceded by either RA, or I forgot what the other one is, but the RA means regular Army. It means you weren't drafted, you joined. But I basically joined, excuse me, because I had a gun to my head and they were going to draft me anyway.
Anyway, okay. Do you get any extra benefits for that, RA at all?
No, none whatsoever.
Okay,
now, the interesting thing is when I went in the Army, they give you an intelligence test just the first few days, I believe it was, that I was in. And I scored, out of the 100 or so people in my company, I believe the second or third highest score on the IQ test.
Ooh.
So I'm thinking, all right, they're not going to send me to Vietnam in the infantry because I'm smart, right? And then later on in basic training, of course, you go to the rifle range and you learn how to shoot weapons. Well, maybe I was one of the smartest guys in the unit, but I was probably the worst marksman. I was terrible.
Well, that's good for you. That way they won't send you, right?
Therefore, my conclusion in all this is, therefore, they sent me right into the infantry.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Even though you were a worse shot. Huh?
Well, they did offer me what's called officer candidate school, but it would have meant another 10 weeks in the Army, and I turned it down. And I think the fellow that interviewed me for that, since I turned that down, I think he's the one that made the decision, all right, we're going to send this guy into the infantry.
Well, the next question, obviously, is then, are there atheists in Foxholes? A lot of Christians believe that when the time is near, you turn.
Absolutely there are. I went into the infantry. I went over to Vietnam. I remember my first night in the field, actually the night before my first night in the field. When you get to Vietnam, I landed at Ben Hoa Air Base, which is a huge air base near Saigon, a big Air Force base. And I was there for a few days, maybe a week. Getting acclimated to the climate was a mother. It was a bear. It's so hot and humid there, you can't imagine. It makes Louisiana look like Hawaii.
Oh, wow.
Over 100 degrees with 99% humidity constantly. It takes a while to acclimate. And so I was there in Ben Hoa, and then they sent me up to Chu Lai, which was another air base in the northern part of what was then South Vietnam. From there, I was sent to a smaller base. So after 2 weeks of being in Vietnam and being acclimated, I finally was going to go out to my infantry unit. The night before I was sent to my infantry unit, the platoon I was in, about 20 guys, was mortared, and one man was killed. That was my introduction. That was the night before I was sent into the field. So the following day, myself and 2 other guys were loaded into a helicopter and were sent out to the field. And when we got there and we met everybody, etc., they told us we were going to stay on that same hill that night, which was very scary because Charlie, that's the enemy, that's what we called the enemy, obviously had his mortars fixed on us, and staying there meant we were probably going to get mortared again that night.
Well, wouldn't you think that they mortared that one day and nobody would go in there stupid enough to go in there the next day, so they changed their mortar position?
Well, no, I'm talking about the enemy had their mortars fixed on it. We didn't know where they are. I don't remember because that was my first day, but all I know is I was very afraid because, like I said, that they had gotten hit the night before and one guy was killed. So they said, well, dig foxholes. Well, the ground was so hard, it took another guy and myself 2 hours to dig a hole about 8 inches deep, which wasn't going to help us at all. It was like digging through concrete. And so the sun is starting to go down, and that's usually when they hit you after dark, and I was terrified. And then the word came out, we're moving off this hill. And oh boy, it's like this huge weight was lifted. And
well, boy, you didn't thank God though.
No, I didn't thank God.
Right. Now, did anybody else? Was anybody else in your company an atheist?
I met several atheists, not in my company. There was a lot of, you always hear this thing on how you become real close to people when you're in combat and everything. Well, for some reason, there was a lot of influx. A lot of guys going out, a lot of guys coming in my infantry unit. And so I never had a chance to really get close to very many guys, maybe 2 or 3 that I was with.
So you probably didn't have a chance to talk religion with them.
We did. It did come up. The word got out that I was an atheist. And of course, oh, you won't be an atheist long. As soon as you're in your first firefight, you'll convert, blah, blah, blah. Well, we got into a nasty firefight. It was brief, but it was pretty intense. We were machine gunned. And after the firefight, later I said, I'm still an atheist. Well, they said, well, that's because it wasn't intense enough. So in other words, there's no way you can win. If people have the mindset there are no atheists in Foxhole, even if there are atheists in Foxhole, they're not going to believe, they're not going to take you at your word that you don't believe. But for me, the whole idea, since I wasn't raised with religion, the whole concept of praying or calling out to God, it was as alien to me as it would be for a Christian to throw a rug on the floor and bend over and pray on the rug. I mean, it just wasn't something that I did. I cried to Mommy a few times, and I was so terrified several times that I don't even remember what I said, but yeah, I felt that fear, but never once did I waver toward a religious belief at all. In fact, it reinforced my atheism in that the old problem of evil comes up. Why would a good, caring, loving God allow terrible things to happen? I saw children die. I saw horrible things over there, and it just reinforced.
Well, of course, the Christians would say, well, that's man's doing.
Yeah, right.
Of course, what God is really doing is withdrawing his protection. I hear this a lot from other Christians about the Mennonites and about Hosea 13:16. Read Hosea 13:16 and you'll see what I mean. And what I get from religionists is that God is withdrawing his protection. Well, that isn't a good answer to me. To me, that just is an excuse to say, well, those people were evil, and including the babies and the infants and the children, and of course they would save the woman under 12 for their own slaves. Of course, that could mean a lot of different things. Some people think it's sex slaves. Are you familiar with the Mennonites story, Numbers 31 at all?
No, I'm not. I've done a little.
Gotta read the Bible.
I have read the Bible actually, and I've done a little more than that.
That's a good one. Yes.
I could give a talk on that because I've done a great deal of research about. What's interesting to me is where the stories of the Bible came from and all of that. I don't want to get into that now.
I wish we could get into the history of it later on.
We can, yeah, because it's fascinating.
It is, yes.
It's definitely
when exactly and how it progressed into a legend.
Oh yeah, well, it's definitely a human conceived book. There's no question in my mind that the Bible was written by men limited by the parochial knowledge of the times in which they lived.
That's right.
I mean,
in fact, if there was, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, Genesis basically says that it doesn't say the earth is flat, but the implication is there, and you have the firmament over the earth. First, there was primordial water. Not too many people know this, but the first lines of the King James Bible, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, is actually a mistranslation. The original first line is much longer than that, and there's a line in there where God moved over the surface of the waters. And later in the Bible, he separates the primordial waters with the dome of the firmament, and the word firmament in Hebrew means beaten out like metal or beaten metal bowl. And he separates the water above with the hard dome of the firmament and below with the earth. And so the earth and this dome in tandem hold back this watery abyss. Well, of course, this is nonsense. We know the universe doesn't look like that.
Well, and the firmament was actually a physical layer, not the sky above us, but a physical layer that was above us that had candles in it. Is that correct?
Well, whatever the lights are.
They were candles.
The celestial bodies moved on the dome of the firmament. It's never really, it's not really explicitly laid out in the Bible.
Well, the Bible also says the four pillars of the earth as well. Of course, that can translate it into, well, they just means the four different areas. Well, there aren't four areas of the earth. You know, there are different continents. If the Bible would have said something like, in the future, there will be a very important equation that will produce energy for all, and the equation is E equals mc squared.
That would have been profound.
That would have been profound. Well, or anything else to this day, if they found a date in the Bible that says in 2012 there will be a great earthquake at this particular area of the earth, because there's earthquakes all over, of course, at this particular time, that would be also profound.
Well, of course, and these are ancient myths. But I want to get back to my Vietnam as a couple of things. And now I've lost my train of thought. But
you can edit. We'll edit that out. Okay.
But yeah, there was lack of belief. And interestingly, about a few months ago, I was searching the internet for chaplains' views on religion and what their soldiers believed. And I came across a quote from a chaplain who was part of the Iraq War, who said he was surprised by the number of atheists in foxholes that he found, and that there were many of them, and that combat didn't shake their, quote, faith. It didn't change their view of the world. So yeah, I guess there's an entire organization of atheists.
That's right.
Former military atheists, and there's an effort by some of them to fight the incursion of fundamentalist Christianity into the military, especially at the Air Force Base in Colorado, and I can't remember what the name of it is, but apparently there's been a lot of coercive Christianity going on there.
I think that's the Atheist Military Association. I'm not sure about that. I will add the website, the correct name of the website at a later date. But for instance, an atheist in Iraq had to be chaperoned by bodyguards to fight, because there were so many people that were Christian that didn't even want an atheist fighting in their company. It's just a lot of these horror stories that come back from the military are just as bad as any of the sexually discriminatory horror stories that you hear about from women coming back from the military. And I wanted to ask you, did you have any proselytizing of Christianity in your company?
Well, I was there in 1969, and it was before the modern movement of Christianity, and it was even a little bit before the beginning of the born-again thing, and there was some, but I really don't remember too much. I know there were fundamentalists. There were people who were very, very fundamentalist oriented, but no, it wasn't like it is today. I got one thing I do want to share. When you're in combat, you develop a sense of fatalism. I think it's a defense mechanism, and so one of the things that I would hear very often from fellow soldiers was, when it's my time to go, it's my time to go.